Magnus Carlsen, you dog. No one does this to Vladimir Kramnik. What's up, guys? In this video right here, Magnus Carlsen is going on a shock and awe campaign versus Vladimir Kramnik, and I do mean shock and awe. Now, real fast, if you don't know who Vladimir is, if you're not a hardcore chess fan in general, Vladimir Kramnik is the new life coach of Hans Niemann. He's a future world champion in his own right, and beyond that, he is the guy who is single-handedly accusing more people of cheating in online chess than virtually any other person alive. Now, in the game, Magnus Carlsen here, playing as white, opens 1d4. Black goes knight f6, c4, and e6. And real fast, first of all, this game took place in the 2020 Legends of Chess prelims. This game was insane. But beyond that, more importantly, I am promoting Hans Niemann's new chess platform, Endgame.ai, as you can see above my floating talking head right up here. So if you want to support me and do me a massive favor, reach out to Hans Niemann on Twitter. Tell him that I personally sent you to tell Hans that I am serious about promoting his new platform and partnering with him in the future. So reach out to Hans for me on my behalf. Tell him I have an audience. I sent you personally to message Hans and that I'm serious about promoting him and his new platform in the future and frankly right now. All right, from here, we have knight c3 and then d5. Vladimir Kramnik striking in the center with the queen's gambit declined. Now, most black players in this position will go for the Nimzo Indian with the move bishop b4. It's thought to be a little more solid, a little safer. Black can go bishop b4, he can castle, he can go d5, c5. It's just a slightly stronger overall defense. But the move d5 here is also good. The only drawback of this move order, I mean, typically black will wait for white to go knight f3 before going d5. The reason you do that is if you go d5 right away like this, white can get a very good version of the exchange QGD with the moves c takes d5, e takes, and then bishop g5. Now, the reason this line right here is so strong for white is white can get the optimal setup of his pieces with the moves e3, bishop d3, and then knight g to e2. That knight coming to e2 is the big factor in this position. Normally, if the knight's already on f3, white can't do that. But if the knight has not moved yet, going to e2 is by far the strongest and most challenging setup, and Magnus here is going to show the true power of that formation in this game. All right, Vladimir, c6 is the move. We have e3 and then h6, driving back that bishop. It goes to h4, by far the best square. Again, you don't want to give up your precious dark squared bishop that early in the game for nothing. Those two Bs are just too important in this position. All right, black. Bishop e7 is the move, setting up castling, a logical idea. Magnus, bishop d3, castles, and then here, the key move of the opening is knight g to e2. Again, this is the reason most black players, myself included, will wait for white to go knight f3 before committing to d5 with the QGD. This setup right here by white, the idea is you want to castle, go f3, and then later go for the key British e4, and if black will let you go e5, driving back this knight and launching a massive attack on the king side. And quite frankly, this line for white is just so much fun to play. It's just an absolute blast. Give it a try in your own online games. All right, from here, black, rook to e8, lining up the rook on the semi-open e-file, a logical idea. White castles, and then here Vladimir plays a pretty common idea in this line for black. He plays the move knight to h5. Now, the reason you want to play this as black is you are defending, you do have potentially a little bit less space in the center here, and you're trying to trade off at least one pair of minor pieces, these being the dark squared bishops. Now, very importantly, white here, he really doesn't have a way to keep this piece alive. If you go back to g3, black's going to take it, and if you don't move it, black takes it. So no matter what, you simply have to trade it off, and taking on e7 is likely the best option. So Magnus in the game, he goes for that. Bishop takes e7, we have queen takes, and now here, Magnus plays a really, really important move, showing the depth of his understanding of all things chess opening theory. Normally in this line, the queen goes to c2. The point being the queen and the bishop line up on this diagonal. The queen also pressures e4, setting up e4 ideas. Normally, it's just a better square for the queen. However, in this specific variation, where black goes rook to e8, queen to e7, like this, with pressure on e3, the queen actually belongs on d2 instead of c2. The point being, on d2, it supports the e-pawn, which makes f3 easier to achieve later in the opening. And of course, f3 and e4 is the entire idea for white in this variation. Now, from here, queen d2 is the move. And by the way, if you want to learn this variation for white, I personally play this as white. In the future, I'm going to have a comprehensive guide on how to play 1d4, 2c4 style openings for white at my school community. I'm currently building out multiple opening courses for you guys there. The link is down below in the description, along with the link for Hans Niemann's new platform, endgame.ai. So it's still a work in progress. It's not ready yet. I'm building out the black repertoire as we speak. Anyways, from here, black, knight d7 is the move. Then Magnus, rook a to e1, the best square for the rook. Now, both these rooks are simply perfectly placed. The idea is this knight is going to move to, say, g3 or f4, f4, or c1, and then white's going to go f3 with the e3 pawn fully defended, and from there threatening to move e4. So Magnus here, I mean, he's playing everything flawlessly, thinking 5-10 moves ahead, knowing f3, e4 is the plan, therefore getting all of his pieces on literally the ideal squares to make that plan happen. All right, black here, knight to f8, a good move. Actually, a multi-purpose move. The knight started its journey on b8, then it goes to d7, and then f8. From here, it has access to both g6 and e6, and also this bishop can now enter the game on, say, e6, or f5 or g4 later in the game. So a good unwinding move, finding a better square for the knight, and also opening up the scope of this bishop. And after all of the action is happening on the e-files and the f-files, therefore black has to bring everything over for the defense. Now here, Magnus, how does he want to continue? He plays, quite frankly, a typical Magnus Carlsen move. This guy always finds ways to bring his pieces back to the first rank in a way that actually improves his position. Here, he plays the move knight to c1. Now, this move may look strange unless you understand the idea of what he's going for. Again, Magnus here, he wants to go f3 and e4, but if he goes f3 right away, he loses the e-pawn. Therefore, knight to c1 is the move, increasing the defense of the e3 pawn, and therefore f3 and e4 is now achievable. All right, black. Knight to f6 is the move, and then f3, Magnus going for that e4 break. And this is why, personally, I love these 1d4, 2c4 openings, including the QGD, the Queen's Gambit. They're so strategic, and the long-term ideas, I mean, if you understand the long-term ideas in these openings, you can really kind of think long-term and try to find the right way to get the pawn structure that you want. All right, from here, black, knight to e6 is the move, centralizing the knight and pressuring squares like d4 and f4. Now, very importantly, if white ever goes e4, the pawn on d4 will fall as well. Therefore, Magnus here, he has to find a way to increase the defense of that pawn, and he does that with the move knight 1 to e2. He actually brings back the knight, the point being, now the pawn is not under attack. Now, technically, black could go, say, knight to f8, increasing the pressure on e3. But by then, Magnus could actually go e4 right away and just go for it. So Magnus finding a way to sort of swindle black into an inferior position here. All right, Vladimir, how should he respond to the impending threat of e4? That is effectively on the agenda on the next move. Well, black has a few options. The most attractive one, the most committal, is perhaps c5, responding to the center attack with an attack on the queenside. Instead of that here, Vladimir goes for a completely different idea. He goes b5, gaining space. Now, what is the idea behind this move? It's simple. This knight on c3, it must defend the e4 square. So, if white goes e4, this knight is so important in terms of controlling e4. However, with the pawn on b5, Vladimir is ready to respond to e4 with the immediate b4 advance, trying to knock the knight away to, say, a4, and then taking on e4 and pressuring this pawn. So it's a really, really deep idea. Unfortunately for Vladimir, though, it doesn't work out in this exact position, because Magnus here, he just goes knight to g3, a solid move, and e4 is coming whether Vladimir likes it or not. Now, Vladimir, a5 is the move, gaining more space, getting sort of it's sort of like the English attack of the Knight of Sicilian. Getting these pawns going here, intending b4, a4, and so on. Now, here, Magnus, he plays a move that I did not understand at first until I played through like 2 to 3 more moves. This move, it's not what you typically play in this variation of the QGD exchange variation. He plays the move queen to f2. So what is going on here? Well, actually, it's very simple. This knight on g3, it's normally not on the square in this line. However, given that it's here, it's eyeing the f5 square, which would hit the queen. And if white can get this knight on the f5 square and then go queen g3, he's going to have threats on g7, threats on h6, and so on. And these two pieces are going to coordinate absolutely perfectly, and white can actually attack without having to go e4 immediately. All right, Hans, bishop a6 is the move, sliding out. Now we have knight to f5. The knight jumps up and pressures the queen on the e7 square. Now, queen d8, the queen slides back, knight to e2, the knight drops back as well, and then we have the move c5. Here, Vladimir going all out on the queen side, trying to get some form of counterplay before white goes e4. Now, if white went e4 immediately right now, that would be potentially a weakening move, as there's just so much tension in the center here. Instead, Magnus, he continues with the piece-based attack. Queen g3 is the move. Now the threat is simply knight takes h6, as the pawn on g7 would be pinned to the king on the g8 square. A really, really insane attacking idea by the GOAT right here. All right, Vladimir, he's down, but he's not out. c4 is the move, driving back the bishop. It goes back to c2. And now Vladimir, how does he defend against these threats? Well, he plays the move knight to h5, hitting the queen. Now, technically, you can take on h6. However, if you do that right now, then black could go back to, say, f8, and suddenly both the queen and the knight are both under attack. Therefore, taking on h6 right now might be at least a little bit premature. So instead, Magnus, queen to h3 is the move. He slides over with the queen and pressures the knight. Now, Vladimir, in response, he goes g6. Now, this move is very, very committal. I mean, first of all, g6 on the king side is always going to be a weakening move to some extent, especially if there is not a dark squared bishop on g7. Beyond that, of course, it gives up the defense of the pawn on h6. And here, Magnus, he simply jumps in and takes the pawn. Knight takes h6 is the move. And here, Vladimir, if there's one thing you should not do, you should not go to h8 here, as then you lose the queen to the fork on the king and the queen. So instead, king g7 was chosen. But now, Magnus, the brilliant move, knight to f5. The point being, you hit the king with check, and if you take the knight, then this knight on h5 falls as well. Now, here, black, king to g8. The king slides back, and then we have knight e to g3. Magnus trying to increase the pressure over and over. And by the way, the computer here says white's position is so strong, he can actually play the move g4, attacking with the g-pawn. That is just ludicrous. All right, instead, knight e g3, chosen in the game by the GOAT. Now we have knight takes, queen takes, and then here Vladimir. He tries to get these pawns on the queen side, rolling down the board. He has this 3 versus 2 queenside pawn majority, so pushing these pawns makes a lot of sense. However, it's just a little bit slow in this position, as after all, literally all of the white pieces are just lining up on the king side here. Vladimir, he has to think defensively. Instead of that, he goes b4, pushing it on the queen side, playing a very gutsy, instinctual style of chess. But Magnus, this guy came ready, and he's about to blow open the board in a shock and awe campaign versus the former world champion Vladimir Kramnik. Here, Magnus, the move is knight to h6, hitting the king with check. The king goes to g7, and then the brilliant move, knight takes f7, removing the defender of the pawn on g6, and now the simple threat is queen takes g6, which would be checkmate in very, very short order. All right, black here, he has to take this knight. If you don't, you are simply cooked. All right, king takes f7. The king takes the knight, but again, Magnus here, he is cooking. The bishop takes on g6. Bishop takes g6, skewering the king and the rook behind it. The king's got to move, king e7, and then you simply take the rook. Bishop takes, queen takes, and then e4. Magnus finally getting the key e4 break. That is the entire idea of this knight to e2 line in the exchange QGD. I mean, normally around move 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, you're getting it in. Instead, in this game, he waits all the way until move 32 to finally get the key break. And look at this. Magnus here. I mean, these pawns are going to start rolling. The rooks behind them, supporting the pawns, the queen on the g-file, arrows everywhere. I mean, this is just getting really, really bad for Vladimir. All right, Vladimir, c3. He is down but not out. He pushes the pawn, threatens c takes b2, and also opens up the attack on the rook on the f1 square. Very, very good stuff by the former world champion. Now, rook f2 is the move, defending the rook and defending b2. Now we have king f7, b takes, and Magnus now, finally, he gets the pawns rolling on the king side. f4, here we go. Shock and awe campaign begins. We have d takes e4, and then f5. Magnus is not slowing down one bit. Knight to f8, the knight flies back, and then rook takes e4. And just look at the difference in the quality of the pieces. If there's one thing that happens over and over and over again in all of Carlsen's games, this guy gets every single piece on phenomenal squares, and somehow the opponent always has something like this where literally every piece is bad. The king is exposed, the queen doing nothing on d8, the knight on f8, that knight on the edge of the board is dim, the rook on a8 trapped by its own pieces, and the bishop covering squares that, quite frankly, do not matter in this position. I mean, every single game of the GOAT, this just always seems to happen. It's just simply absurd how he does that. All right, rook b8 for Vladimir, trying to fight back. Now, h3, guarding against any, and I mean any, future back rank mating threats. A good, solid idea. We have rook b1, hits the king, king h2, and then queen to b8, offering the queen trade. Now, technically, you don't have to go for it. You can go, say, rook f4 or rook e5, blocking the attack of the queen. But here, Magnus says, you know what? I am so far ahead, I'm going to trade queens. Queen takes, and then simply rook to e3. The rook drops back and threatens this pawn. And sooner or later, one way or another, this pawn will fall to the two rooks. For example, if black defends, rook to c2 wins the pawn either way, and white here is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 extra pawns on the king side. He's going to have the extra rook and 4 pawns versus the 2 minor pieces. That is just too much here. All right, bishop c4 is the move. Rook takes c3, attacks the bishop. Bishop d5, rook c5, attacks the bishop again. Then rook d8 defends. Rook takes a5. Magnus having an extra 5 pawns versus Vladimir. This is just too much. I mean, talk about total evisceration right here. Vladimir, rook d7, g4. The pawn march continues. Knight to h7, king g3, rook c2, rook to e7. Sorry, rook to c2. Now rook to e7, king h4, bishop e4, attacking the rook. Magnus, rook b2, sliding over. Knight d5, king g5. The king march has begun. Marching like this all the way up. The king has begun in attacking pieces in this game. All right, rook d7, rook to a6. Magnus cutting off the 6th rank. There is no escape for poor Vladimir and his poor little king on the f7 square. Rook c7, the rook slides over. Rook to e6, knight c3, rook to f6, hits the king, king g7, rook g6, king f7, and then king to h6, threatening rook g7 with the skewer of the king on the 7th rank. Rook c8, the rook slides back, rook g7, king f8, and then rook to b6. Look at this, Magnus Carlsen playing with his food here. The king literally cut off on the back rank. The end is certainly near. All right, bishop d5, rook to h7, threatening ideas like rook h8, again skewering the king and the rook. We have knight e4, rook h8, bishop to g8, and seriously, in the last like 10 to 20 moves, Magnus has played virtually flawless moves nonstop. This is just getting ridiculous. All right, rook g6, the rook slides over, king f7, and now the finishing blow. Rook g7, king f6, rook h takes g8, and in this position, Vladimir Kramnik, he simply resigns on the spot to Magnus in the 2020 Carlsen Invitational Preliminaries. Wow, what a game between Magnus and Vladimir Kramnik in this crazy tournament where, let's be honest, Magnus here went on a total shock and awe campaign versus the former world champion, making it look simply ridiculously easy in this game. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you thought of this video, the game itself, and also, what do you think of Hans Niemann and Endgame.ai? Again, for the next month or so, I am promoting Endgame.ai on this channel. My goal is to partner with Hans Niemann and offer so much free value to the guy that he has no choice but to work with me. So, if you want to help me out, help me reach my goal of partnering with Hans Niemann, reach out to Hans on Twitter. Tell him that I personally sent you. Tell him I have an audience, that I want to partner with him, that I'm totally serious about this, and I'm serious about the other things I said to him in private in the DMs. So, help if you enjoy this channel and want to help me out, just reach out to Hans Niemann on Twitter. Tell him that I sent you. I'm serious. I want to partner with him, and so on. And let's make this happen. And by the way, let's all hope that Endgame.ai actually works. I mean, competition is a good thing. And if Hans can bring out an even better platform than the ones we already have, hey, I mean, we should all be for it, right? So that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I'll see you in the next video.